Осколок прилетел в сердце, разорвало все. Что вы сделали с моим сыном? Негодяи, я вас проклинаю до 7-го поколения.
Men die in the special operation. A law has been prepared which obliges the civilian population to leave their homes in case of any emergency, even mythical, which may be easily announced by a local official. Return home is not provided, not considered. Conditions in temporary accommodation centers are very much like in a concentration camp. According to the state standard, it is but 2 square meters per person. The food is miserable. Evacuation is provided without children. They are to be taken in an unknown direction separately from parents. How are people to move in accordance with acting legislation in columns of 500 people at a speed of 4-5 kilometers per hour? They must walk 30 to 40 kilometers a day. A state standard has been adopted on mass graves in wartime and peacetime. Officials specified how many corpses are to be put in one row and how to ram mass graves with a bulldozer. Belgorod, Bryansk, Tuapse, Adygea were attacked by drones, which took off from the territory of Ukraine. I can feel the approach of war just like every Belgorod citizen. Tension is up in the air. Absolutely everyone is now in some kind of incomprehensible state of fear and panic. New details of Ukrainian saboteurs' invasion in Bryansk region have become known. According to the FSB of Russia, 2 groups of militants were operating in the region at once. Having penetrated into the villages, the saboteurs opened fire on the cars of local residents. 2 men died. An 11-year-old boy was wounded. The terrorists also mined the area near Sushane village. A car of the Russian National Guard was blown up on one of the mines during an operation to eliminate their saboteurs. Not just mercenaries are fighting in Ukrainian army ranks. NATO, well-armed and aggressive army, is fighting against Russia under the guise of Ukrainian armed forces. Here are the facts. NATO countries provided Kiev regime with a large amount of military equipment, which is already being operated by mercenaries from NATO countries. In September 2022, Yuri Podolyaka, a military blogger, reported the following. My very reliable source from Ukraine says, I went outside and noticed that the bulk of soldiers that come across are English-speaking people, not Ukrainian soldiers. I counted several hundred just walking around in one day. A battalion at least. Can you imagine how many of them are present there in reality? 7 NATO generals arrived in Ukraine in May 2022. They worked at Ukraine's armed forces general staff in the very center of Kiev. It is NATO generals who plan Ukrainian military operations and instruct on what weapons to demand from the West. Evidence proved that NATO headquarters was located in Azovstal plant.
Натовцы вышли на нашу разведку через открытый радиоканал и просят дать им возможность эвакуироваться в Днепр.
The group includes colonels. The total number of Western military personnel is a few dozen. However, Putin personally ordered to cancel storm of Azovstal plant, and NATO officers, according to numerous reports, were just withdrawn. Media had informed in advance about Putin's plans to invade Ukraine, so he did. Now everyone is warning about counteroffensive. Do you know what power stands along Russian borders and on the front line? Your loved ones are dying before your eyes. We are all related within our people. Take to the streets. Indeed, well-trained NATO army stands at our borders, while our army is unshod. All we can do now is to show miracles of heroism. But what to do if no shells are provided? Can you resist howitzer with miracles of heroism, with a pitchfork? 400,000 NATO soldiers, not Ukrainians, have already been gathered along the Russian border. No reasonable man will believe that they will supply military equipment and train Ukrainians to operate it. Those nuts one may keep for himself. In reality, every tank or howitzer arrives with its combat crew and only one step left, combat aircrafts with bombing. Because NATO do not do without bombing. They bombed Yugoslavia and Libya. They only fight with bombing. They do anything not to get in touch, and even under such conditions, they prepared 400,000 soldiers at the border. NATO is already at war there, and do their best to implement the Chabad project aiming to separate Russia into 30 parts or 40 parts and share between NATO member countries. Do you want the enemy Bud to come and kick you out of your place? For that is their goal. Why? Because the global climate is changing and comfortable climate will be in Russia mainly. They know that and scientists claim that. Only you, common persons, for unknown reason, do not care about that. Although you live on the blessed land with 20 to 30% of world natural resources and which will be the only area suitable for life in a few decades. The Third World War has begun, and that is no longer hidden. There exist forces intending to convert it into nuclear war by all means, and yet we, like ostriches, hide our heads in the sand and hope to survive forever in our tiny world, hope that terrible events would not catch up with us. However, they will certainly catch up with us. Digital money will be pushed into our lives too. Indeed, they have already implemented the idea in a number of world countries, and it is no longer hidden. The digital money is to ensure a concentration camp for disenfranchised people. Digital money is not by a non-cash payment. That is complete absence of money in our pockets. Bankers are going to keep digital money in their own pockets. The same bankers who organized the First and the Second World Wars and concentration camps during the wars. So they do have the experience. You are going to work hard, but get only points in bank's database. You will not even be allowed to spend those points at your discretion. All your spending will be controlled. It will be impossible to accumulate your points. So if your banker will get displeased with your independent behavior, they will simply cut you off from your wallet and you and your family will starve to death. This is the final stage of CIA's Chabad project of Russia destruction, which was launched with color revolution, collapse of the USSR and coup in 1991-1993. Then traitors infiltrated the peaks of power. Gorbachev was a traitor to the Soviet Union, and all his actions cannot be interpreted otherwise. In the mid-80s, it became more and more clear. There are people in the Soviet Union who can only be qualified as traitors to the Soviet Union. These people are in power in Russia today, and they are connected with Great Britain. Evidences have been presented proving Gorbachev and his wife to be agent of CIA. Yeltsin was agent of MI6. Both were paid for by Rockefeller. Gorbachev received $75 million. Yeltsin received $2.5 billion. Yeltsin took Putin into presidential office by hand, literally. However, before that, Yeltsin received consent to Putin's candidacy from Bill Clinton, which has been revealed by the stereograms of their telephone conversations. CIA agents not only overthrew Russia's legitimate government, but has also participated in destruction of Russia according to the Chabad project, which was paid for by the same Rockefeller. Here is what we know by the moment. The two world wars were paid for by bankers who in reality divided the world among themselves. First of all, they were the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. The First World War was organized to get rid of monarchies. Bankers wanted to gain control over countries under the guise of democracy and puppet presidents. The Second World War was to destroy socialism as threatening to capitalism and turn the Soviet Union to a backward colony of Western countries. The CIA was established to complete the plan. The same bankers paid for same aim – destruction of the USSR. Here are the statutory goals of the CIA.
Искоренение господства Советской России на территориях, находящихся за пределами послевоенных границ России.
First of all, it is necessary to establish control over the core of the globe, Russia. Otherwise, the world domination of Anglo-Saxons is unattainable. The main and natural enemy of the Anglo-Saxons on their way to the world hegemony is the Russian people. Therefore, whether we believe it or not, there have always been forces who felt Russia as an obstacle on this earth. It has not been possible to defeat Russians with wars, and Bismarck once said that in order to defeat Russia, Ukraine must be separated from it, and the two fraternal peoples must be pitted as bitter enemies. Consequently, the military conflict is but a performance, just like the false flag operations that started two world wars. Assassination of Austrian Archduke Ferdinand was the pretense they used to launch the First World War. The assassination was attributed to Serbia. However, it was intelligence services of Great Britain and France who prepared and fulfilled it on the order of world bankers. The Second World War began with provocation too. Allegedly, Poles attacked the radio station in Gleiwitz. In reality, German saboteurs dressed in Polish uniforms attacked the radio station. Hitler was sponsored by the same Rockefeller associates. And today all the media warn that the conflict in Ukraine is the beginning of the Third World War. It is known that one and the same world bankers turn Ukraine and Russia against each other and financially support Chabad sect, who openly proclaimed their aim to establish New Jerusalem on the land of southern Ukraine and Russia. That is, the whole world walks into the same trap for the third time. Pre-planned quarrel between peoples, incitement or fratricidal war for money-bags profit. They want lands and resources and absolutely do not need people who live on these lands and claim these resources. Schneerson spoke clearly about Chabad's plans to divide Slavic peoples into small, weakened countries. Chabad's goal is to pit these countries against one another and to make them fight against one another. They misled Ukrainians to kill Russians and therefore allegedly to defend their independence. Russians were convinced that they are to return their lands illegally seized. Therefore, the two nations are being driven off their lands with such intricate way. As a matter of fact, with lie and betrayal. And all the deceit is ensured by a human-hating ideology of new fascism, which is much worse than Hitler's. Indeed, he declared Aryans to be the super race and destroyed masses of alleged subhuman and never achieved world domination. Now new shocking information is being revealed. There is a force in the world that, following Hitler, is striving for world domination. There are reasons to believe that all political processes in the world are supervised by the fascist Jewish sect Chabad. It carefully hides behind benevolent screens. However, it is Chabad that stands behind the leadership of almost all the leading countries of the world, primarily the US. Edward Hodders confirms the influence of Chabad on world politics. It is not just another sect. They are the people who control heads of governments of the leading countries of the world and meet with them. The worldwide expansion was proclaimed main purpose of Chabad. The tops of power, both in Ukraine and Russia, are governed from Chabad headquarters in New York. That is, both sides of the conflict are managed by one and the same control panel. It has already become obvious that both Ukrainian Maidan and Russian coup in 1993 were carried out by the CIA according to its scenario of color revolutions. After such coups, puppets are put in power to fulfill the will of their masters and not the people. The interests of the people and the puppets' masters are directly opposite. The result of the 1993 coup is the implementation of CIS Harvard project, according to which Russia is supposed to be destroyed by those who govern it. Ukraine is also being destroyed by the hands that have been placed in its power. Chabad sect is ensuring its plans to seize territories and destroy the Goyim with hands of puppet presidents. In his speech, Schneerson spoke about Chabad's plans to reclaim the territory allegedly owned by the Jews in the past and to create Great Khazaria on it. They plan to move some Israelis there, while so-called Slavic cattle to be cast out far to the north. In our opinion, the lands of the New or Heavenly Jerusalem are located in the south of Ukraine. These are 5 regions: Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Nikolaev and Odessa regions. It is on the territory of these regions that the New Jerusalem will be created in the future, which will allow further development and earthly way for the entire Jewish people. Ukrainian President Zelensky is a protege of Kolomoisky, an influential member of Chabad sect. Zelensky accounts at the Dresdner Bank in Costa Rica accumulated $1 billion during his presidency alone, as reported by Ilya Kiva, Ukrainian Verkhovnaya Rada's deputy. The money was transferred to Zelensky by oligarchs and Chabad members, including Akhmetov, Pinchuk and Kolomoisky. Replenishments come regularly in amounts from $12 to $35 million. They move through the banks of Germany and France, and therefore European authorities are well aware of the trenches. Europe does not ban but support the payments. Chabad's success in Russia are boasted of by Beryl Lazar. Russia has known many revolutions, but the most peaceful, the quietest and the most effective has been the revolution that the messengers of Chabad created. That was largely due to Putin personally. Never, and no leader of Russia or the USSR did so much for the Jew as Vladimir Putin, in every way, unprecedented. Beryl Lazar wrote in Jewish Russia book. It is unlikely that the citizens of Russia know whose hands took Putin to the heights of power. Recall that he received a new important position every year. In common sense, such important positions can only be obtained with very serious behind-the-scenes support. Edward Hodas published in his memoirs that he first heard about Putin during his visit to Israel in 1997. There, Itzhak Radoshkovich, the president of the New Entrepreneurs Association of Israel, mentioned in passing that his second cousin Vladimir Putin had great prospects for advancement in the Russian political elite. 3 years later, Putin made a dizzying career with the help of Jewish oligarch Berezovsky, from a deputy mayor of St. Petersburg to president of Russia. Today, we all understand how elections are massively rigged. In 2000, after the presidential elections, the Duma Commission, headed by Alexander Sali, revealed numerous falsifications. If not for fraud, Putin would not have won the election. And then Putin organized his elections with his own hand. But we have got accustomed to the rigging of election results. We wave our hand at all falsifications, which means that we allow the invaders of power to steer us. Beryl Lazar said, "The president is a Jew without authority. Putin and Medvedev are members of the Chabad community, and I am its leader." Putin said that offering prayer at the Wailing Wall was his long-cherished dream. That is a dream of a Jew, and Putin apparently is himself a member of the Chabad sect. What is Shabbat? It is an ideological doctrine shared by some Jews. There has always been two concepts, Jew and Yid. According to Yid is a set of qualities of cunning and self-interest. The Yid is a miser, a selfish Scrooge. To behave like a Yid means to screw, to extract every penny by extorting, by underpaying. The two concepts has always been realized as different, for not all Jew people follow fascist principles of Yiddism. Moreover, faithful Jews themselves expose Chabad and consider it a fascist sect. Indeed, Chabad is a sect in the classical sense. According to definition, sect is a subgroup of people who are separated from a belief system, and Chabad separated from Orthodox Jewish faith and opposed itself to Orthodox Jews. Russian Jewry is threatened by the radical Jewish sect Chabad Lubavitch, which main purpose is to prepare the coming of Moshe, that is, Messiah. About 10 years ago, Ber Lazar, the current chief rabbi of Russia, opposed the Federation of Jewish Communities to Congress of Religious Jewish Communities, then active in Russia. He hated most of Russian Jewry and began aggressive expansion in all regions. Chabad is not just Orthodox, but ultra-Orthodox Jews, which is reflected in everything, in their religious beliefs, in their way of life, and even in their clothes. Although unrecognized in the Jewish religious world, Chabad Lubavitch has created a multi-thousand wing of its sect among Russian Jews united on the occult teaching of Moshe Schneerson. The ideology of the selective superiority of one race is set forth in the book Tanya. This is the foundation of the Jewish creed of Chabad. According to Tanya, God created the world exclusively for the Jews. According to Tanya, there exist two types of souls, divine and animal. Only 600,000 pure-blood Jews have divine soul. Jews are the only ones to whom the concept of human can be applied. The rest peoples of the world are called Goyim, are compared with vomit and sewage. The civilization of Goyim, in their opinion, must be destroyed. The Jews themselves consider Chabad a fascist sect and Tanya an analog of Hitler's Mein Kampf. In other words, Russia was able to stop the invasion of Hitler's fascism, but didn't notice how it led the neo-fascism of Chabad into the country. After all, Chabad people are also confident in their God coziness and the right to dominate the entire planet while destroying the rest, unworthy of life on earth. That is fascism indeed. What does the word Jew mean? How to translate the word Jew? Jew is ivory, me ever, that is from the other side. That is, our people is essentially not like everyone else. We are different, and the difference is that the Jews were created as special people, not as individuals who are different in instincts over others. We are special people, special souls, which came into this world with a special mission. And the Almighty gave us how to translate the mission into reality.
Всевышний дал нам возможность как эту цель воплотить в действительности.
According to Tanya, the apotheosis of world history for Chabad people is the destruction of all life on earth, including millions of Jewish soul sparks, which in turn will unite into the original 600,000 and begin the process of eternal soaring over the desert earth. Learned philosophers and philologists analyzed Tanya and concluded that the book propagates the ideas of racial inferiority of non-Jews, incites hatred and enmity towards them, humiliates their dignity. Doctors of sciences, professors and other specialists signed the above-mentioned conclusions. The book is by any criteria absolutely racist, absolutely Nazi. Many quotes, deep analysis of the book prove that. After we have proved that, we naturally submitted the evidences to law enforcement agencies, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the FSB, the Investigative Committee. Initially, we submitted our analysis with modest request to recognize the book as extremist material. We did not demand any persecution for Chabad Lubavitch. At the very first stage, our request was hacked to death. However, the book has not been banned. It has not even been examined by state bodies under pretense that it is a historic monument of the 18th century. However, another book of the 18th century, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, was banned, although the protocols expose the strategy of Jewish world domination. The protocols are not allowed into our public life, while Tanya is allowed. Criminal cases under extremist articles are easily initiated in Russia, even for a picture in a social network. At the same time, the obviously fascist book is just left alone. Isn't that a sign of how influential the Chabad sect is, and how much it has penetrated into power structures? Here are the life principles written in their books. Talmud, Old Testament. It is permissible to take interest from a goy, and also to deceive him when selling. Your God will bring your Jewish people into the land that he swore to give you, with large and good cities that you did not build, and with houses filled with all good things that you did not fill. You Jews will be forcing out nations that are larger and stronger than you. Every place the soul of your foot treads will be yours. Talmud, Old Testament. Jews may make false promises for excuses. Shabbos Hag. To give property or money to a Goyim is tantamount to death for them. A Jew can have anything he finds if it belongs to an Akom Goy. He who returns property Goyim sins against the law, increasing the power of offenders. Choshen Ham 388:15. If it can be proven that someone has given the money of Israelites to the Goyim, a way must be found after prudent consideration to wipe him off the face of the earth. Chutzpah is a super blatant lie and meanness, dumping one's crime on an innocent person. Chutzpah is the most honorable trait of its character. Chutzpah may be described as an immeasurable arrogance, lie, and meanness. An example of an unimaginable chutzpah. A son who killed both parents out of selfish motives demands indulgence from the court because he is now an orphan. Chabad members may look rustic and smiling. However, this is their mask, which they keep for centuries in order not to reveal their essence. Perversions are written in their books, as well as an emergency exit not to be tormented by conscience. Goyim girls from the age of 3 may be subjected to violence. If a Jew has coitus with a Gentile woman, whether she be a child of 3 or an adult, whether married or unmarried, and even if he is minor aged only 9 years and 1 day because he had willful coitus with her, she must be killed, as is the case with a beast, because through her a Jew got into trouble. According to Edward Hodder's, homosexual relations are used as an obligatory ritual at a certain level of Chabad sect. The rabbis have recently introduced a new law. Rabbi Nekleot issued an order forbidding all girls over 5 years of age to ride bicycles, believing that it gives rise to depraved thoughts in men. Here is what is literally written in Rabbi Nekleot's decree. We inform parents that they are obliged to prevent their daughters older than 5 years from doing this illegal act. Riding a bicycle is illegal and it must be trampled on every corner, whereas the rabbinic prescriptions are silent about the depraved thoughts that teem with religious yeshivot. It is not allowed to talk about that. But every now and then the press gets reports about rabbis, molesters, about students of closed yeshivas who rape their classmates. Where are the guardians of modesty looking at in such case? Unknown. Such spiritual dirt is reflected in the physical dirt. It is a Jewish tradition to have the rite of purification in mikveh, which actually is bathing in sewage. Razanov, a profound Russian philosopher, described the mikveh as follows: "This bathhouse stinks unbearably, and an accustomed person can neither bathe in it nor even pass it without holding his mouth and nose. That stench occurs after thousands of people visit the mikveh one Friday, and everyone leaves there his or her dirt, smelly sweat and urine accumulated on his/her body. They do not change the water in mikveh for several months in a row, and eventually becomes a thick, sticky, felted mess consisting almost entirely of sweat." From childhood, Chabad adherents are brought up in hatred for the Goyim. This secret was revealed by Neophyte, a Christian monk, in his book The Secret of the Blood of the Jews. He was not only of Jewish nationality, he was a rabbi and therefore known all customs exactly. Here is what he described in his book. At the wedding ceremony, the rabbi gives the newlyweds an egg to eat. The egg is sprinkled with special ashes. He pronounces the prayer, "May both of these newlyweds gain the power to kill Christians, or at least let them always have the opportunity to deceive them and take possession of their property, obtained by the sweat of their faces." The ashes replace Christian blood and are prepared from blood. They collect the blood on Pesach as extracted from the veins of Christians tortured during the most terrible torment. Then they soak tissues with the blood. The tissues are then dried and burned. The ashes are preserved in well-sealed bottles in synagogues and then used in ceremonies. According to Neophyte, there is no more impious faith in the world. Woe to the world if they ever seize power. Facts prove true everything described in Neophyte's book. Ritual sacrifices were fixed by courts. The following is the most well-known historical case. A most well-known crime took place in Kiev. Andrei Yushchinsky, an innocent boy, was found dead with signs of an occult ritual murder. Menachem Mendel Beilis was charged with the crime. Jews from all over the world took up arms to hide the true cause of the crime. They spent the equivalent of at least $115 million in modern terms to ensure that the Beilis team of lawyers won this case. Several witnesses died under mysterious circumstances before the trial. Some of the evidence in favor of Beilis was false. Numerous facts were published proving ritual murders of children having place since the 3rd century BC till now. There are a lot of such cases. This is an anti-human centuries-old faith. A sensational story happened in Krasnoyarsk in 2005. 5 schoolchildren disappeared on the eve of Pesach. The children were found killed and bled according to the rules of the Jewish ritual, and the details of the murder were very similar to the Beilis case. About 40,000 children go missing every year. They are never found. This is a clear confirmation that the kidnappings are not properly investigated and children are destroyed without a trace by some hidden forces. In 1989, a Jewish girl, Rachel, told Live in Oprah Winfrey show that her family had been practicing human sacrifice ritual for several generations.
On the show, Dr. Rome
Oprah asked the girl, "This is for the first time I hear that Jews sacrifice children, and yet did you witness the sacrifice?" Rachel replied, "Yes, when I was little they forced me to participate in this and I had to sacrifice a child." When Oprah Winfrey asked, "Have other Jews been involved in similar activities?" Rachel replied, "There are other Jewish families all over the country, not just our family." Rachel went on to name her other relatives, doctors, police officers, and others who were also involved in such activities. The principles of ritual murder among the Jews are the slow death of the victim, torment, bleeding, and gagging. Also, by shutting the mouths of the public, they have been evading responsibility for their actions for many years. Jews reportedly even have a special cash fund allocated for self-defense in courts. Allied Sakir allocates money for bribes to fight the bloody accusations of Jews. However, the worst thing is that the ideology of Chabad is the ideology of a real sect. Chabad people are sure that their God, Moshe, will reward them for this murder of humanity with eternal bliss in the next world. According to their faith, Moshe will fly to them only when they fulfill his instructions and destroy all people on the planet. Tatiana Krotova, a journalist who worked as an assistant of rabbi in the Shabbat community in Perm, confirms Hodas's words. If we think they just want money, just want power, they must not be underestimated. They are ideological people, they are fanatics, they have a clear idea, which is as follows. As Permian Jews who attend Tanya classes explained me, God allegedly created the world for 6,000 years. Today is 5,783 years according to Jewish calendar. Therefore, there remained less than 300 years for the world to exist, and Chabad members want to accelerate the material destruction of the world.